Thank you for joining us for a very special video podcast. Today we're going to be going over a very heavy topic, but it's one we need to discuss. I've been seeing a few pictures online recently of the people killed by the police. It really impacted me, and I wanted to do a podcast including pictures of all of them. Honestly, I have been unable to find a large collection of their pictures. It's hard enough to find a list of their names, so I decided to do what I can for this cause and compile as many pictures as I could. Unfortunately, many of the pictures are hard to find, and the lists online generally include those from the last 10 years. So sadly, it's just a fraction of the actual number of people killed, but I want you to look at each face of the black men, women, and children who were killed by the police. Each person here leaving behind friends, family, loved ones, dreams, hopes, aspirations. We cannot forget what happened to them, and I want this to be a way to honor their lives. So, today, I want to focus on what famous black activists have had to say throughout the years in poetry, theater, song. Now, I am not black. I can use this platform to inform you, but it is not my voice that needs to be heard. It is not appropriate for me to give my thoughts nor perform the roles meant for black actors, so I have asked my friends Ed and Jessica to take over most of today's podcast. What I can do, however, is I will donate $1 for every view this video gets to the Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation, up to 250 views. I just ask that you listen to this, look at the pictures, and share this podcast with others. So, without further ado, let's begin.
Hello there, my name is Edson, but you can call me Ed. I'm from this little-known country called Mozambique. As Alex said, we'll be looking at some creative works by black artists worldwide. First off, we have a poem by Langston Hughes, who is better known as the leader of the Harlem Renaissance. The Harlem Renaissance was an important period for black creativity, which had profound implications for art and music for the whole of the United States. The Harlem area itself was a neighborhood where black Americans lived in and owned beautiful buildings, which was something unique at the time. The richest and most successful black Americans moved to Harlem, and some gained prominence in literary and musical circles. This piece by Mr. Hughes, simply titled Harlem, talks about what happens when dreams are deferred or put on hold. Here we go. What happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up, like a raisin in the sun? Or fester like a sore, and then run? Does it stink like rotten meat, or crust and sugar over, like a syrupy sweet? Maybe it just sags like a heavy load. Or does it explode? I hope you enjoy that piece of history. Next up is a play that was inspired by a line in the poem that was just read. This is Lorraine Hansburry's A Raisin in the Sun. This play was the first by a black American woman to have been performed on Broadway and is widely regarded as one of the best plays ever written. The play is about racial segregation in Chicago, specifically a black family who moves into a white neighborhood but is being prejudiced against due to their skin color. Even though they have succeeded economically with everything stacked against them, they couldn't overcome the social barrier. One of the most famous scenes from the play is this. For this reading, I will be stating the role and then going into the dialogue. Hopefully, this won't be too disconcerting. Benita. Don't you see? There isn't any real progress as a guy. There's only one large circle that we march in, around and around, each of us with our own little picture in front of us, our own little mirage that we think is the future. As a guy, that is the mistake. Benita. What? As a guy, what you just said about the circle. It isn't a circle. It is simply a long line, as in geometry, one that reaches into infinity. And because we cannot see the end, we also cannot see how it changes. And it is very odd, but those who see the changes, who dream, who will not give up, are called idealists. And those who see only the circle, we call them the realists. And that was the end of that piece. Dr. Kenneth Clark, a man instrumental in the desegregation of schools in America, once said, "It is a kind of Alice in Wonderland with the same moving picture shown over and over again, with the same analysis, the same recommendations, and the same inaction." End quote. The optimism Assegai has is what we need, though. Idealists have always propelled us forward, and today, more than ever, we need them. And we must be careful to not confuse idealism with ideology. Together, we can achieve a brighter future for everyone. Racial equality as the norm. One step in the right direction is still a step towards something greater, and with enough steps, we will eventually reach it. Next, we have a song that has truly stood the test of time. The Revolution Will Not Be Televised by Gil Scott-Heron.
You will not be able to stay home, brother. You will not be able to plug in, turn on, and cop out. You will not be able to lose yourself on Skag and skip out for beer during commercials because the revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be brought to you by Xerox in 4 parts without commercial interruptions. The revolution will not show you pictures of Nixon blowing a bugle and leading a charge by John Mitchell, General Abrams, and Spyro Agnew to eat hog maws confiscated from a Harlem sanctuary. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be brought to you by the Schaefer Award Theater and will not star Natalie Woods and Steve McQueen or Bullwinkle and Julia. The revolution will not give your mouth sex appeal. The revolution will not get rid of the nubs. The revolution will not make you look 5 pounds thinner because the revolution will not be televised, brother. There will be no pictures of you and Willie Mae pushing that shopping cart down the block on the dead run or trying to slide that color TV into a stolen ambulance. NBC will not be able to predict the winner at 8:32 on report from 29 districts. The revolution will not be televised. There will be no pictures of pigs shooting down brothers on the instant replay. There will be no pictures of pigs shooting down brothers on the instant replay. There will be no pictures of Whitney Young being run out of Harlem on a rail with a brand new process. There will be no slow motion or still lights of Roy Wilkins strolling through Watts in a red, black, and green liberation jumpsuit that he has been saving for just the proper occasion. Green Acres, Beverly Hillbillies, and Hooterville Junction will no longer be so damn relevant, and women will not care if Dick finally got down with Jane on Search for Tomorrow, because black people will be in the street looking for a brighter day. The revolution will not be televised. There will be no highlights on the 11 o'clock news and no pictures of Harry armed women liberationists and Jackie Onassis blowing her nose. The theme song will not be written by Jim Webb or Francis Scott Keys, nor sung by Glenn Campbell, Tom Jones, Johnny Cash, Engelbert Humperdinck, or The Rare Earth. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be right back after a message about a white tornado, white lightning, or white people. You will not have to worry about a dove in your bedroom, the tiger in your tank, or the giant in your toilet bowl. The revolution will not go better with coke. The revolution will not fight germs that may cause bad breath. The revolution will put you in the driver's seat. The revolution will not be televised, will not be televised, will not be televised, will not be televised. The revolution will be no rerun, brothers. The revolution will be live.
Ugh, that last line cuts deep. Especially because mainstream media has stopped reporting on protests around the world, for the most part. This song is reminiscent of Malcolm X, with the title being a slogan from the 1960s Black Power movement. He references pop culture from that period to show us that if the average person were to stand up and do something, they would be silenced by those in power and likely forgotten in the annals of history. The revolution will not be dictated by government, by corporations, or by the media. Freedom, in the truest sense of the word, does not come by sitting on the sidelines and burying your head in the sand. People fought for in the past and they still do now. We still do now. The next piece is a short poem by Clint Smith, a scholar, activist, and spoken word poet. It is called Ode to the Only Black Kid in Class. You, it seems, are the manifestation of several lifetimes of toil. Brown versus bored in the flesh. Most days, the classroom feels like an antechamber. You are deemed expert in all things Morrison, King, Malcolm, and Rosa. Hell, weren't you sitting on that bus too? You're everybody's best friend. until you are not. Hip-hop lyricologist, presumed athlete, free and reduced sideshow, exception and caricature, too black and too white all at once. If you are successful, it is because of affirmative action. If you fail, it is because you are destined to. You are invisible until they turn on the Friday night lights. Here you are, star before they render you asteroid, before they watch you turn to dust. This is simple, powerful, and evocative. The weight of being the only black person can lead to a diminishment of identity and self-worth, aspects which are continuously eroded by the world at large. History that is never talked about, idols that never looked like us, and the long shadow of stereotypes that reduce us to caricatures. Next up is an excerpt from a generally forgotten play called Rachel. It was written by Angelina Weld Grimke, who also rose to prominence during the Harlem Renaissance. The play came out in 1920 and is about a woman whose family has been tormented by the racism that plagues America, and that is still relevant today. Additionally, the pamphlet advertising the play at the time stated, "This is the first attempt to use the stage for race propaganda in order to enlighten the American people relative to the lamentable condition of millions of colored citizens in this free republic." Here, we have her last two speeches in the play, in which she discusses the torment of a boy that she lives with. She shares this experience of his school with a friend of the family. This time, however, we'll have our good friend Jessica read the play.
I am 22 and I'm old. You're 32 and you're old. Tom's 23 and he is old. Medea's 60 and she said once she is much older than that. She is. We are all blighted. We are all accursed, all of us, everywhere. We whose skins are dark, our lives blasted by the white man's prejudice. And my little Jimmy, 7 years old, that's all is blighted too. In a year or two, at best, he will be made old by suffering. 1 week ago today, some white boys older and larger than my little Jimmy, as he was leaving the school, called him nigger. They chased him through the streets, calling him nigger, nigger, nigger. One boy threw stones at him. There is still a bruise on his little back where one struck him. That will get well, but they bruised his soul, and that will never get well. He asked me what nigger meant. I made light of the whole thing, laughed it off. He went to his little playmates and very naturally asked them. The oldest of them is 9, and they knew, poor little things, and they told him. For the last couple of nights, he has been dreaming about these boys, and he always awakes in the dark, afraid of the now and the future. I have seen that look of deadly fear in the eyes of other little children. I know what it is myself. I was 12 when some boys chased me and called me names. I never left the house afterwards without being afraid. I was afraid in the streets, in the schools, in the church, everywhere, always afraid of being hurt. And I was not afraid in vain.
The weeping begins again.
He's only a baby, and he's blighted. Honey, I'm right here. I'm coming in just a minute. Don't cry. If it nearly kills me to hear my Jimmy crying, do you think I could stand it? When my own child, flesh of my flesh, blood of my blood, learned the same reason for weeping? Do you? Ever since I fell here a week ago, I am afraid to go to sleep. For every time I do, my children come and beg me, weeping, not to bring them here to supper. Tonight, they came when I was awake. I have promised them again, now by Jimmy's bed. I have damned my soul to all eternity if I do.
And later alone, she continues her thoughts. This is the last speech in the play. The boy, Jimmy, is crying in another room, and she decides what to do. She says,
I shall never see you now. Your little brown, beautiful bodies I shall never see. Your dimples everywhere, your laughter, your tears, the beautiful, lovely feel of you here. Never, never to be. But you are somewhere, and wherever you are mine. You are mine, all of you, every bit of you. Even God can't take you away. Little children, my little children, no more need you come to me weeping. You may be happy now. You are safe. Little weeping voices, hush, hush. Jimmy, my little Jimmy, honey, I'm coming. Ma Rachel loves you so.
Sobs and goes blindly, unsteadily to the rear doorway. She leans her head there 1 second against the door, and then stumbles through and disappears. The light in the lamp flickers and goes out. It is black. The terrible, heartbreaking weeping continues.
Her dream was to have children. She chose not to have any so they wouldn't have to grow up in a cruel and unjust world. She stopped them from having to live through that. How terrible must we be to make someone fear so much that it stops them from achieving their dreams? This is what happens to that dream deferred, when there are so many people afraid for their lives and livelihoods. There is such a desperation that they feel living is worse than anything they could have accomplished. What are you doing to prevent that? Lastly, we wanted to end this podcast on a hopeful note. Ed was nice enough to find this next poem and get people from around the world to perform it. So, here is Sage Hasson's One.
Billions of people are struggling
to fulfill seemingly different agenda.
But we are all in pursuit
of one collective destiny.
We all just need one.
One dream.
one day,
1 hour.
1 minute,
1 second.
1 moment.
one